Daniel was living the life many men in Lagos dreamed of. At 32, he was a successful businessman with a thriving real estate company. After years of loneliness, he finally decided to marry Angela, a beautiful 42-year-old widow with a 21-year-old daughter, Cynthia. He thought he was gaining a loving wife and a ready-made family. What he didn't know was that he had invited chaos into his life. Angela and Cynthia moved into his luxurious duplex in Lekki, and at first, everything seemed perfect. Cynthia was polite, respectful, and even called him daddy. But something about the way she looked at him made him uneasy. At first, he ignored it, thinking it was his imagination. But as time passed, the way she smiled at him, almost teasingly, made him question his thoughts. Angela, oblivious to the underlying tension, was overjoyed to have financial security again. She spent her time shopping, attending church programs, and enjoying the comfort Daniel provided. Meanwhile, Cynthia grew bolder. It started with small things, walking around in revealing clothes, bending in ways that made Daniel avert his eyes, and accidentally brushing against him. One evening, as Daniel sat in the living room watching TV, Cynthia walked in wearing a tiny pair of shorts and a tank top. She leaned over the couch to grab the remote, pressing herself against him slightly. "Sorry, Daddy," she said with a smile that lingered too long. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "It's fine," he mumbled, eyes fixed on the screen. Cynthia giggled and walked away slowly, swaying her hips. That night, Daniel lay awake, wondering if he was imagining things. Was he overthinking, or was something deeper going on? Little did he know, this was only the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Cynthia's behavior became even more unsettling. She found small ways to invade Daniel's space, lingering in the kitchen while he cooked, brushing past him in the hallway, and fixing her gaze on him longer than necessary. Each time he caught her staring, she would smirk before looking away. One Sunday afternoon, Angela had gone out to visit a friend, leaving Daniel and Cynthia alone in the house. He decided to stay in his study, hoping to avoid any interaction, but Cynthia had other plans. She knocked on the door and walked in without waiting for a response. "Daddy, can you help me with my laptop? It's acting up," she asked, placing it on the desk in front of him. Daniel sighed. "All right, let me see." As he focused on troubleshooting, Cynthia leaned in closer than necessary, her arm lightly grazing his. He caught a whiff of her perfume, a sweet yet intoxicating scent that made him tense. He felt a strange mixture of discomfort and curiosity. Cynthia tilted her head. "You always look so serious, Daddy. Don't you ever relax?" Daniel cleared his throat. "I relax just fine." He fixed the laptop and pushed it toward her. "Here, it should work now." She reached for it, her fingers lightly brushing against his. She didn't pull away immediately, letting the contact linger. Her eyes met his, and for a brief moment, something unspoken passed between them. Daniel jerked his hand away and stood up. "I need some air," he muttered, walking out of the room. Cynthia watched him leave, a sly smile playing on her lips. This was going to be fun. Daniel tried his best to ignore Cynthia's behavior, but she wasn't making it easy. Every day, she found new ways to test his resolve. He avoided being alone with her, but somehow, she always managed to corner him. One evening, Angela was out again, this time at a church vigil. Daniel sat in the living room, scrolling through his phone when Cynthia appeared, wearing an oversized t-shirt that barely covered her thighs. "Are you busy, Daddy?" she asked sweetly. Daniel sighed. "Just relaxing." She moved closer and sat beside him. "I was thinking, maybe we should get to know each other better." Daniel stiffened. "Cynthia, I think we already know enough about each other." She tilted her head, studying him. "Do we?" Before he could respond, she stretched, causing the shirt to ride up slightly. Daniel quickly looked away. "I miss having deep conversations," she continued. "Most men I meet are boys, immature. You're different, though. Strong, mature." Daniel stood up abruptly. "It's late. You should get some sleep." She pouted. "You always run away from me." "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, walking towards the stairs. Just as he reached the top, Cynthia called out, "Good night, Daddy." "Sweet dreams." Daniel didn't respond. He shut his door and locked it. His heart pounded as he sat on the bed. He needed to talk to Angela. But how could he explain this without sounding insane? As he lay down, his phone buzzed. A message. From Cynthia. "You don't have to fight it. We both know there's something here." Daniel's hands trembled. This was getting out of control. Daniel stared at the message on his phone screen, his breath shallow. His pulse pounded in his ears as Cynthia's words taunted him. "You don't have to fight it. We both know there's something here." He deleted the message immediately, his mind racing. No, this had to stop. He couldn't allow this madness to continue. The next morning, he left the house earlier than usual, avoiding any interaction with Cynthia. At work, he buried himself in meetings and paperwork, but his mind refused to cooperate. Cynthia's face, her smirk, her teasing words, they all haunted him. By the time he got home that evening, Angela was already back, chatting on the phone in the kitchen. Cynthia, on the other hand, sat in the living room, dressed in a fitted jumpsuit that hugged her curves. She looked up as he walked in, her eyes gleaming with mischief. "Welcome back, Daddy," she said, stretching lazily on the couch. Daniel ignored her and walked past. "You didn't reply to my message," she added, her voice soft but loaded with meaning. He froze mid-step. Angela's voice echoed from the kitchen, still deep in conversation. He turned to Cynthia, lowering his voice. "This has to stop," he said through gritted teeth. Cynthia stood up and walked toward him, her expression unreadable. "You're the one making it complicated, Daniel." His first name. She had never called him that before. She took another step, closing the distance. He could feel the warmth of her body, the scent of her perfume wrapping around him like a trap. "I see the way you look at me," she whispered. Daniel exhaled sharply and stepped back. "Stay away from me, Cynthia." She smirked. "We'll see about that." Just then, Angela walked in. "What's going on?" Daniel turned to his wife, forcing a smile. "Nothing. Just tired from work." Angela smiled warmly. "Let me get you something to eat." As she walked away, Daniel risked one last glance at Cynthia. She winked. This wasn't over. Daniel barely slept that night. Cynthia's message kept replaying in his mind, like a forbidden whisper that refused to fade. By morning, he had made up his mind. He would set firm boundaries. This nonsense had to stop before it spiraled out of control. At breakfast, Cynthia acted like nothing had happened. She sat across from him at the dining table, casually eating toast while scrolling through her phone. Angela, oblivious as ever, was chatting about a wedding she had to attend that weekend. "Daniel, will you be free on Saturday?" "I want us to go together," she said, pouring herself a cup of tea. Daniel nodded absent-mindedly, his eyes flickering toward Cynthia, who was smirking behind her cup of tea. Angela's phone rang, interrupting the moment. She excused herself, leaving Daniel and Cynthia alone. The silence stretched between them like an invisible thread of tension. Cynthia finally spoke, her voice light but laced with mischief. "Did you sleep well, Daddy?" Daniel clenched his jaw. "Cynthia, listen to me." But before he could finish, she slid her phone across the table toward him. On the screen was their chat from last night. His stomach tightened. "Relax," she whispered. "I haven't shown it to anyone yet." Daniel's fists clenched under the table. "What do you want from me?" he asked, keeping his voice low. Cynthia leaned in, her expression unreadable. "I just want you to stop pretending." Footsteps approached. Angela returned, still engrossed in her call. Cynthia casually picked up her phone and resumed eating, as if nothing had happened. Daniel swallowed hard. He was trapped in a dangerous game, and Cynthia was enjoying every second of it. Daniel spent the next few days avoiding Cynthia at all costs. He left the house early, stayed out late, and barely spoke a word to her. But Cynthia wasn't one to be ignored. She thrived on attention, and Daniel's attempts to escape only made her more determined. One evening, Angela announced she would be traveling for a church retreat over the weekend. "It's just for 2 days," she said, packing her bags. "You and Cynthia will be fine, right?" Daniel hesitated. "Maybe I should go with you." Angela laughed. "You? At a church retreat? Please." She kissed him on the cheek. "Just take care of Cynthia for me." Cynthia, who had been listening from the doorway, smirked. "Don't worry, Mom. Daddy and I will have fun." Daniel's stomach twisted. The moment Angela left, Cynthia dropped all pretenses. That night, Daniel locked himself in his bedroom, but Cynthia knocked lightly on his door. "Daddy," she whispered. "Are you awake?" Daniel didn't answer. "I made something for you," she continued. "Come and taste it. I promise you'll love it." Daniel remained silent, hoping she would go away. Instead, she giggled and walked off. Minutes later, he smelled something sweet drifting from the kitchen. Against his better judgment, he stepped out and found Cynthia setting up the dining table with a candlelit dinner. She looked up and smiled. "You're finally here." Daniel's voice was firm. "Cynthia, whatever game you're playing, it stops now." She sighed, crossing her arms. You can keep lying to yourself, but we both know you feel it too. She took a step closer. Or are you scared? Daniel stepped back. I'm warning you. Cynthia suddenly pulled out her phone and tapped on the screen. A voice recording played. Cynthia, whatever game you're playing, it stops now. His own voice. Daniel's blood ran cold. Cynthia grinned. Now imagine if I edit this and send it to Mom or post it online. Daniel stared at her, his mind racing. He was trapped, and Cynthia knew it. Thank you for watching. Kindly comment part 2 if you want to know what happened next between Daniel and Cynthia. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos.